Hey guys, we're going to be learning about factoring this unit. We're going to learn about three different types, and the first type today is GCF, and we will be using this often. So a GCF, first of all, is the letters factor that two or more terms have in common. So we're going to first start off by finding them with numbers. So for 28 and 8, you figure out all the numbers that go into those. So I start with 1. 1 goes into everything, and it goes into 28 times. 2 goes into it 14 times. 3 doesn't go evenly into it, so I don't write it down. 4 goes into it 7 times. 5 doesn't go into it, and neither does 6. And then we're back at 7, which is already written down. For 8, 1 goes into it 8 times. 2 goes into it 4 times. 3 doesn't go into it, and back to 4. Step 2, you underline what they have in common. They have a 1 in common, a 2 in common, and a 4 in common. So now I circle what the biggest number they have in common is. It's right there. So 4 is the GCF. It'd be great if by the end of the lesson or the end of the unit you would be able to look at 28 and 8 and say, all right, the biggest thing they have in common is 4 without having to do all of that. So I'm going to show you a calculator trick for this. So what you want to do is you want to go to y equals. So right there in the top left-hand corner. I'm going to put the number that I want to find all the factors of in. So I do 28, and then I hit the divide button, and then X, which is next to the green button. Then I hit second, the blue button, graph, which is up right-hand corner. It'll bring you to a table. Now this shows all the numbers that go into 28. So there's our 1 and 28 that we wrote down first. There's the 2 and the 14, 4 and 7. You want to ignore all the decimals. So if you're not good at mental math, you can use that, and we'll be using that a lot more. All right, let's try the next one, GCF of 8x and 2x. So I'm going to start with just the numbers. So 8 and 2. 8. 1 goes into it 8 times. 2 and 4. 1 goes into 2. And then we're back at the beginning. So now we'll underline what they have in common. 1 in common, 2 in common. So the biggest thing they have in common is 2. Now we can't forget about those variables. They both had x's with them, so the GCF is 2x. Last one. GCF of 18x to the 10th, y to the 7th, 54x to the 18th, y to the 3rd. So I start with the numbers, 18 and 54. I could use my calculator because it's kind of big numbers if you want. If you put it in the calculator, you would get 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. You put 54 in, you get 1 and 54, 2 and 27, 3 and 18, 6 and 9. Okay, now I'm going to underline what they have in common. They have a 1 in common. They have an 18 in common. They have a 2 in common. They have a 9 in common. 3 and a 6. So they have a lot in common. But the biggest thing that they have in common is they have 18 in common. And it's always wise to look at the smaller number, and if it goes into the bigger number, then that's your GCF. 18 went into 54, so right off the bat we could have known that was the GCF. All right, now as far as the variables go, we have x to the 10th and x to the 18th. The GCF of that would be the smaller of the two, so x to the 10th. And then y, we have y to the 7th and y cubed. The smaller of the two is y cubed, so that's the GCF. All right, now we're going to go on to some actual problems that you're going to be seeing on your homework, well, I guess your classwork, and will be on your tests. So there's 3 steps to this as well. So for this, we first find the GCF. So I have 2 in, and now I have a plus sign in between, and 6. So you can write out the factors of 2 and 6 if you want, like we just did. But I would hope at this point, maybe you'll be able to look at 2 and 6 and realize that the biggest number that goes into 2 and 6 is 2. And I can know that because 2 goes into 6. All right, step 2, I divide the polynomial using the GCF. So I'm going to take the 2n plus 6, and I'm going to divide both of those terms by that GCF that I just found out. So 2n divided by 2, this 2's crossed out and I'm left with n, plus 6 divided by 2 is 3. So step 3, we write the factored form using this derivative property. So I take this GCF of 2, I put that out front, and then inside parentheses I put what was left over. And that's my final answer. You must not forget to put the 2 out front. All right, the next problem, I have negative 4n and minus 16. So I could write out my factors if I want, but hopefully you can realize that what goes into 4 and 16, the biggest number is 4. Now, since the first term had a negative sign in front of it, your GCF should be negative. So I'm going to take my original problem, and I'm going to divide both of these by the GCF. That crosses out. I'm left with n. Negative 16 divided by negative 4 is plus 4. So my final answer is, I put the GCF on the outside, and on the inside I put whatever was left over, the n plus 4 in this case. And that's my final answer. All right, the next one, I have 12m squared n minus 18mn squared. So I figure out with the numbers first, what could be the GCF of that. So you can write out your lists if you want, or maybe at this point you can tell the GCF would be 6. 6 goes into 12 and 18. And then I look at both m's. So I have an m squared in the first problem and an m on the second problem. So the smaller of the two is m. Then I look at the n's. There's one n there and two n's there. So the smaller of the two is one of them. So that's my GCF. So now I take the original problem, and I divide both terms by the 6mn. Okay, when I divide the 12 divided by 6, I get 2. M squared divided by m, this m would cancel, and you'd leave with 1 up top, and the n's completely cancel. 18 divided by 6 is 3. The m's cancel, this n's gone, and that leaves 1 up top. So my final answer is the GCF out front, 6mn, with the leftovers on the inside, 2m minus 3n. All right, next one. So 8ab cubed plus 2a squared b squared. So look at the numbers first. 8 and 2. The biggest number that goes into both of those is 2. Then I look at the a's first. So I have a and a squared. The smaller of the two is a. Then I look at the b's. I have b cubed and b squared. The smaller of the two is b squared. I will take the original problem, and I will divide both of them by the GCF. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. The a's cancel. The b's, I have 2 down here and 3 up here, so we'll be left with 1. The next one, the 2's cancel. The a cancels, leaving us with 1 up top. And the b's cancel. Now, if, say, everything canceled, so say these a's completely were gone. Let me show you. Say those a's were completely gone. That means we wouldn't have an a left over. If that was the case, you would just put a 1 in its place. All right, so then my final answer is the GCF on the outside and the leftovers on the inside. All right, now we have just a couple more and then we'll be done. So these have 3 terms. So you do the same thing. You look to see what all of them have in common. So 4, 18, and 14, you could write out all the factors of those, or you could just figure out, okay, what's the biggest number that goes into them. So the biggest number that goes in to 4, 18, and 14, that's got to go into all 3, is 2. And then I look to see what variables all 3 of them have. So this guy on the end, it doesn't have an x, so x cannot be part of our GCF. But all of them do have y's, so 2 y's are GCF. And so notice I'm kind of skipping straight to the 3rd step. I'm not doing the first 2 steps. I now divide all of these by that 2y GCF. I want to divide them by the 2y GCF, and that first one right there, 4 divided by 2 is 2. There's an x left over, and this y cancels, leaving us with 1y left over. The next one, 18 divided by 2 is 9. The x is still there, and the y's cancel. Last one, 14 divided by 2 is 7, and the y's completely cancel. That's our final answer. Last one. So I look at 14, 49, and 21. So the biggest number, and this one's a little bit harder, so you might want to use your calculator, is 7. And then I look, there's 18x's, 20x's, and 54. So the smaller of the three is 18. So x to the 18th. So now I take all three of these and I'm dividing it by that 7x to the 18th. So for the first one, 14 divided by 7 is 2. The x to the 18ths are gone. Plus, that next one, 49 divided by 7 is 7. 20 on x is on top, 18 on bottom. You subtract them. 20 minus 18 is 2. Last one, 21 divided by 7 is 3. I subtract 54 minus 18, and I get 36. And that's your final answer for that one.